going on, everybody? Today, we're going to talk a little bit about open tunings, specifically through the eyes of a really awesome guitar player named Will Ackerman. And if you've never heard of him, he does a lot of cool instrumental stuff, and he has like a very interesting philosophy. The man, the myth, the legend. We're not talking about Will Ackerman. This guy's talking about Sean Daniels. What's going on, man? Good to see ya. So I'm glad you joined us, because we're going to start rocking some alternate tunings. And in my extensive research on Will Ackerman, who I now call Billy Ackerman because I feel like we're closer reading his Wikipedia page, I have discovered that he has a really cool, different take on songwriting. And again, he's more of like an instrumental guitar player. He has these like really cool, earthy, acoustic, not quite Tommy Emmanuel-esque, but kind of in the same vein, just more of like a chilled out, open type player. And the interesting thing about him is pretty much every single one of his songs is like a different... You smell poser. So the interesting thing about Willie Ackerman is that every single song is a different tuning. And he doesn't really... And the reason he does this actually is because he kind of wants to take a lot of the academic aspects out of songwriting to kind of just make a real feeling and kind of like a discovery of like different things without getting caught up in shapes. So like, what do I mean by shapes, right? If you're in standard tuning, you know, you've got like maybe like a C major shape to a G major shape to like an A minor shape, and then you kind of just use those same maybe licks to go with your shapes, stuff like that. So to kind of get something organic, his philosophy is to just retune the guitar to something like you've never used before. So the downside of that is he ends up with like an immense amount of tunings. So it's kind of an interesting way to approach teaching his style as far as like where to start. So I think we're going to start by kind of going over a song called The Bricklayer's Beautiful Daughter, which is just, it's an amazing song title, because everybody knows the bricklayers have the finest daughters out there. And basically it's one of the easier, more accessible tunings that you can kind of get into. Yeah, I think eventually we may do like a campfire thing. This is campfire-esque, by the way. But if you're watching this afterwards, after the live feed, sometimes just respond to live comments, so it might sound like I'm an insane person, just kind of responding to different people. But essentially, back to this open tuning. This is one of the more accessible Ackerman tunings, but instead of involving down tuning, which I would say most common tunings use, like maybe like drop D would be the most common alternate tuning you would see, where you just take the low E string and drop it down to a D. We're actually going to up tune, okay? So what I mean by that, yeah, exactly right. So what I mean by that is you're going to take the B string, tune it up to a C, and the E string and tune it up to an F. Just like all those campfire players out there do it. They're just like, hold up, let me just break your guitar strings real quick by up tuning the highest two strings, right? So that's the drawback to a lot of these tunings. He's up tuning. Okay? And depending on the tension of your guitar and the strings, it's just us, my man. I'm glad you're here, dude. Depending on the strings you use, the tension of it, you can actually break a lot of strings. He even actually kind of references on his website, saying that he has to use different guitars for different tunings because of the tension. Some of the up tunings will actually break strings. So if you try doing this, I absolve myself of all responsibility. Do so at your own risk, because you actually may break a B or E string by tuning it up to, again, the B is going to be tuned up to a C, and the high E is going to be tuned up to an F, right? So without a capo, it would sound like this. Alright, so already there's kind of like a chiming, a brilliance to it, if you will. And that's going to really kind of help us out. So I'm waiting for this. I know I saw that, right? Keep waiting. It's coming along. So what does this do, right? We're almost going to kind of take the opposite of an Ackerman approach to kind of like talk about how he kind of settles on these tunings, right? Because when he's saying he's just kind of free-spiritedly messing with the tuners until he finds something cool, that's all well and good. But if we're going to kind of analyze what he's doing, we got to take one of these tunings and kind of see how it's affecting things, right? So when we tune the first and second strings 1/2 step higher, making them a C and a F, what we're left with is a very open sounding thing. And the reason that it works is because, like, let's take a C major chord, right? A regular C major chord, if you play it now, it sounds awful, right? Because now this is actually a C sharp. So that's kind of rubbing up against that chord. But if we open that up, there we go. There's the beautiful Will Ackerman countryside forestry that we've all been waiting for so long, right? Yeah, I got you, man, for sure. And yeah, so what's happening here is we're just taking this C, which was a C in the standard tuning, and just making it easier to play by opening it up. So one of the reasons these tunings work really well is because they actually make playing certain songs a lot easier because you have access to triads, major chords, a lot easier. Now this specific tuning, one of the reason, uptuning, like a cheese cutter. You got it, man. So, real quick, let's talk about why this E, A, D, G, C, F is, right? The reason this works is because if we look at the instrument of a guitar and we go low to high, we have E to an A. What is the relationship of A to E? E, F, G, A. It's a fourth. So we go E to its fourth. A to D, A, B, C, D. A to its fourth. D to G, D, E, F, G. D to its fourth. G usually is tuned to a B, right? G, A, B. Well, that's not a fourth. That's why that B string kind of throws us off a lot as far as like maybe arpeggio shapes and solos and stuff like that. But if this is tuned to a C, we continue the progression. G, A, B, C. That's its fourth. And then now C to F, C, D, E, F. Its fourth. So now the entire instrument is tuned to fourths. Okay? Now what that means, what that allows us to, and especially in this example, the Bricklayer's Beautiful Daughter, is we can use the same shapes all up and down the the neck of the guitar, right? So let's take the simplest kind of thing right here. It's just like that open C thing. So 3rd fret on the A string, 2 on the D string. Right, that gives us like a C major chord. Now we can move that down a string, and that's kind of like an F major type thing. We can move that down another string. Usually this is where we'd have to compensate for the B string, but now we actually get this note, which is B flat, and it's major 3rd. And now we kind of have another triad, another 3-note chord there, and we can continue all the way down the neck. So this shape is now fully movable anywhere on the guitar, right? So what this allows us to do is kind of like in that song. To do these kind of like little hammer-on runs. So what we're going to start with is this one right here, the 3rd fret on the G string, that B flat, and now in the 2nd fret on the B string, which is now actually a C string, C, C sharp, and D. Okay, so now we've got this, and we can kind of do this little hammer-on. And this is something that normally wouldn't be available to us in standard tuning, where I can kind of take this 2nd fret, 4, 2, open, and stack it over this. What are my top 5 Ackerman songs? I think there's, this is definitely number 1, The Bricklayer's Beautiful Daughter. Number 2 would probably be The Impending Death of a Virgin, I believe it's called. Number 3 would be Beautiful Babbling Brook. Oh, another comment. You have a slightly odd way of talking. You kind of add a little syllable at the end of your sentences. And the Swift guitar, yeah, I do that, right? It's kind of my style. It's my signature speech impediment that I like to rock. Thank you for noticing. And anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about these chords, right? So basically, we've got these kind of hammer-on things that we can start doing a lot more easily now because we have uptuned into an entire fourths type thing, right? Now, the other example that we can use here is how this helps with our other shapes, okay? Even though Ackerman said Kaiser or says hello, what's going on, man? Good to see you. So we can talk about like these different arpeggio runs, right? So if we start with this G, a G major arpeggio would look like this. We could go like 3, 5, 7, 5, A, okay? Right? G, A, B, D. Just a little 4-note run. Now this is completely movable because all the strings are tuned in relation to each other now as compared to standard tuning. So we can do this, and then that takes us to the next G, and then that takes us to the next G. So now we have one shape that we can repeat all over the fretboard, right? For any major or minor chord, all right? The Martin, somebody asked where the Martin is. The Martin, my friend, is right here because I've got it as a backup in case I break one of these strings, demonstrating one of these alternate tunings. And in fact, I think maybe, all right, so what, we're like 11 minutes into it? I think maybe the 20-minute mark, we're just gonna invent our own Will Ackerman style tuning. Where's Kindred? Kindred's around here somewhere, you know, right? So anyways, back to this kind of one move. Totally did that upside down because I'm thinking of a D major chord. Again, the other thing about open tunings is like, and he's right on this point, because he's right on to the point that like playing with open tunings inspires like a lot of creativity because you're exploring. It's almost kind of like it puts you in the mindset of being a beginner again, when maybe like it's like you find like something like this, and it's like, ooh, what is that? Before you can think that like the 5th fret on the A string, the 4th fret on the D string, and the 6th fret of the G string. Before you know, oh, that's like a major 7 triad. Really, it's like maybe you didn't know that before, and it's just something that sounded cool. It's almost like you felt like you discovered it yourself, right? So that is the beauty, and that's kind of his point in using alternate tunings like this this tuning to fourths method, right? So whereas our regular chords, like a D major chord, sound awful now. A minor, right? If you try playing like a normal thing, it's like, oh my gosh, it really couldn't sound worse. So it forces you to kind of get creative and start exploring into different shapes. So again, the main one here, I think that the entire song, I'm gonna have to keep retuning this guitar because, again, whenever you're retuning guitars, they don't stay in tune. They kind of want to always go back. So someone just asked, what about dadgad tuning? That's kind of like the exact same thing. Obviously, though, that's a little more prevalent as far as like the resources and the amount of yeah, this is like, and the amount of like songs that are in dadgad, which you might get to later on. But again, so staying in this fourth tuning, where this right now is the C string and the F string, right? We can start doing these kind of moves right here and opening them up. Now, what is that really truly helping us out with when we're talking about maybe playing like the bottom 3 strings? Even though, again, the reason he chose this tuning was to kind of get away from an academic approach, I think meeting this tuning with a little bit of academia, so to speak, is a good way to kind of analyze what he's actually doing, right? So now we've got a G, an F, or a G, a C, and an F. So if we look at those 3 notes together, like it's kind of crowded because that F and that G are right next to each other. So what I think of like a C chord. If a C is our root, a G is our 5th, okay? And then an F would be a 4th. C, D, E, F. 1, 4, 5. Those together create a suspended chord, a C suspended chord. And I think suspended chords are the main reason, in my experience, if you're not playing slide or anything like that, if you're just looking for like kind of like really pretty open-tuned guitar chords, suspended chords are really where it's at, because I think they sound fantastic on guitar, albeit sometimes they are able to be played on a guitar, sometimes they're a little bit tricky to play on a guitar. Something like maybe like an A suspended, that can be kind of a reach for a lot of people. So if you just uptune those 2 strings, that'll give you a suspended chord no matter where you are, your root note being whatever the B string, now the C string. So this would be like a C suspended chord, D suspended, E, F, G, and you can just kind of like track it all the way down. A. So in fact, let's take one of those. Let's find an F suspended chord to put on top of that F kind of triad hammer-on thing that he does. So like I said, this is a C suspended, so C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F. 5th fret, right? So maybe we can kind of like take these 2 spots, going here, so the tuning right now, the tuning is E, A, D, G, C, and F. So we've uptuned the highest 2 strings by a half step, which again, do so at your own risk, because sometimes depending on the tension of your guitar, that can snap a string, right? That's why, I mean, Will Ackerman is a guy that just like walks the edge. You know what I'm saying? So, by the way, this was a very special request from one of the Guitar Control patrons. So that's why we're talking about Will Ackerman today, right? So again, we're starting off with this C major, C and its major third, right? So far everything is cool, because if we just take a C major shape and lift that index finger and play the center 4 strings, that's now giving us a C major chord, making it a little bit easier to kind of start doing different things. Like we can just open it up. Now this is, the open B string is now a C. The next note in the melody, if we're in the key of C, which this, the song itself is actually a different key, we can use the 2nd fret, C, D, D sharp. That's the 4th fret on the B string. Alright, and so you kind of keep going through the scale to create different kind of chord melodies. Same thing with down a string. So now where we used to have like an F major triad, this is kind of something he likes to hammer home a lot, are these triads with kind of inflections on them. So when I have the 3rd fret on the D string, that's an F, the 2nd fret on the G string is an A, and then that open C string now, right? And then we've got so we've got a major triad right here. We could add other notes, and that's one that he likes to do right there, which is an F, an A, a D, which again, we can start, it still has that kind of open sound, right? Now we're just going through a chord scale, right? Just like that. So I'm just alternating, or I'm just altering the B string, which is now the C string. Open, 2, 4. And then up to a C. So all these are just different inflections I can do over an F chord, which is maybe a little bit easier now to do. Now again, he uses a capo a lot too. So if he's playing in a different key, this song in particular is on the 4th fret, right? So we can take that same F chord, anything I can do on this B string, 2, 4, 2, open, I can do on the G string. Now sometimes depending on what scale you're in, you can do different frets. In fact, I think it's worth it to kind of talk a little bit about scales and how scales are affected too when you're in an alternate tuning, right? So if we're gonna do, let's stick in the key of C, because that's everybody's kind of favorite key. Even if we're right here stuck on the 4th fret, we're gonna still pretend this is like an open E string. So if we play all the notes in that key, we've got E, F, oh here, let me see. Open 1, 3, that's E, F, G, A, B, C. Open 1, 3, open 2, 3, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. So our scale so far is, and then G, and then 2, right? Alright, now that'll end up, that's so far the low E, to the 2nd fret on the G string would be an A. So usually the next note would be a B that we could go to the next string, but now it's a C, so we have to get that B there, and then go up there. Sorry, somebody said the video keeps freezing. I think this is just an internet connection. It seems to be okay on my end, but anyways, I'm just gonna keep going. So we've got G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So the thing that happens at the bottom end of the scale is right here. Right there, okay? So we're gonna add those to maybe a scale that you already know. And then maybe you can just start adding those into different chords, right? Now, the cool thing is the symmetry of it. I really appreciate the symmetry that some open tunings will allow. And when I say symmetry, it's like now that these two, the highest 3 strings are all 4-2 open, 4-2 open, 4-2 open. So anything you can make with those. Anything you can do is going to sound good because all these notes are in the scale. Still freezing video in Oregon. Weird. Wish there's something I could do, but I do know that this is going to be up in its entirety after the live feed ends too. So if you're having trouble seeing it right now, you can always access it later, and hopefully it should be fine. But yeah, so let's kind of like start exploring what we can do adding these to what is going to be, what we're going to consider a normal low E, A, and D, and G strings, right? So if we take a chord in the key of C like we just did that scale, right? Let's start with E minor chord, which now is different because it's an E minor with a C and an F. Right, so it's kind of like a very minor sounding thing. So that might not be something that sounds like Will Ackerman because a lot of his stuff is actually in more of like a peaceful, I would even say kind of like a Lydian kind of mode key type thing. But these same kind of rules and logic can be applied, and that's the cool thing about open tunings, right? So, again, this is kind of like a riff that you might see in one of the songs over a C chord. Same thing, I'm just adding these bottom 3 strings, which are all totally symmetrical. I'm not even thinking about the chords I'm making because I can't even think that fast on the fly anyways, which, like he said in that interview that I read previous to this video in my extensive research on Will Ackerman, was kind of like his goal to do something like this, right? So basically just kind of like get good with these bottom strings, add them to maybe chord voicings that you already know. So, how about how to transpose songs using a capo? Now, that's actually interesting that you bring that up, which maybe, let's talk a little bit more. You're really dull frozen. Man, is that like just like in general, like my personality, or the actual like feed is like dull frozen, right? I guess, you know, if we're talking about transposing with a capo, it's kind of worth, yeah, I would think to down tune first, then go cheese cutter after. Okay. So what this guy said is actually makes a lot of sense. If we're worried about breaking strings, because again, in that same interview, he says he does break a lot of strings he used to. If you're going to down tune, right, if you up tune the highest 2 strings, that's the same thing as down tuning the lowest 4 strings and putting a capo on. If that kind of makes sense. That'll kind of get you the same effect, right? Instead of tuning the highest 2 strings up a half step, you can tune the lowest 4 strings down a half step, and then just kind of clamp that guy on there. And then you'll essentially get kind of the same deal that he's doing. But, again, this is just kind of like an example of Ackerman style tuning. So what we're going to do, actually, we're going to go back into standard tuning, and we're going to create our own Will Ackerman style tuning. Okay? So, why did I get rid of the Zeppelin video? So that's kind of like a question about the Zeppelin video on my other channel. I got it because it was bringing a lot of negative energy, and it was like a clickbait title. We can get more into that later in the QA. But right now we're making a Will Ackerman tuning. So, let's just randomly tune the low E string to something, right? Should I tune it down or should I tune it up? Okay, I'm going to wait for someone to say down or up. And then eventually I'm going to hit that low E string. I'm just going to wait. Oh, there's a QA? Yeah, generally kind of like after, 35. All right, tune it down. So let's say, what are we going to tune this down to? Let's tune this down to a D. All right, so we're going to go full step down. Why this isn't picking this up, all right? So right now, minimum. We're in drop D, okay? Already seems pretty heavy, right? So now we can kind of make power chords just by barring, right? Better range for your voice. A lot of people, down tuning it down a little bit kind of helps with your voice. A lot of really popular songs. That's not a Sean Daniel riff, that's a Foo Fighter. Sean Daniel riff would be like... cool drop D riff, maybe. Again, still trying to find that tune. So now let's tune something else differently. Let's tune the G to a G. Let's go up on the G string, right? So we're gonna go G sharp. Hopefully it's not gonna break. All right, so now my mind has totally been blown. I have a D, a A, a D, a G sharp, a B, and a E. Right? Okay, so what do we do there? Never tried this out. Sounds pretty interesting, right? Yeah? Once we get the D, A, D. Okay. I guess this guy's made too many. Man, I'm sorry. I wish I could. I'm not a moderator on this channel, huh? You might just have to cool it a little bit. So we've got D, A, D, G sharp. Did I say G sharp? Yeah, G sharp, right? So maybe let's tune the A also down to a G sharp, because that's really close, right? So let's go A, G sharp. All right, so we've got D, G sharp, A, G sharp, B, E. All right. Now the thing that I'm thinking, okay, maybe I want some more symmetry. I could tune this B all the way down to a G sharp, right? If it'll make it. So here's our new Ackerman style tuning, all right? Never played in this before. I have no idea what it's even going to yield. But we've got a D, mostly D, G sharp, D again, G sharp again. So these first two are D, G sharp, D, G sharp again, another D, another G sharp. Right? So it's kind of evil sounding there. Alright, doesn't sound anything like Will Ackerman. So, kind of like he was saying, we have to explore it to kind of find out where the cool stuff is in this tuning, right? So maybe the first thing I'll do is I'll try to grab the 3rd fret on the E string, right? And now maybe I have this D, and it's, would this be a B? Into this, right? So the 3rd fret to the 5th fret. That's something that kind of sounds interesting. And then maybe I'll just, okay, look, I found something a little bit interesting here. I've got 5A, 3D, and open G. Now it's something a little happier. Once I add that B string, which is also G sharp, that's something else that kind of gets in there. Now it's like, all right, I'm experimenting. All of these are in a key together, presumably. All right, so now I found this shape right here. This is something good. Took me a minute, but I got my middle finger on 5A, my ring finger on 5B, and my pointer finger on 4E. And maybe I can move this. Sounds okay there. I don't like that. Maybe this one's kind of good. And then, all right, so maybe this is the shape I'll use. This is the shape I'll use. Let's play it up here. No, I don't know what that is, but do you know the sound of that? Again, I don't even know the notes I'm playing right now, but that's definitely a dominant 7 chord. So maybe that's something I can kind of like store away in my mind for this new selective tuning, is that anytime I've got a note, down a string, 2 open ones, and another one, that's going to give me a dominant 7 chord. So whatever this note is now, there's a dominant 7 chord. So this is a brand new shape that I've never played before, but I've just discovered that it's dominant 7, right? So, you know, if we think of, there's that dominant 7, you can hear it, bum bum, dominant 7. Maybe I can kind of change that. And there's my major 7 chord. So now I've got this new shape, 5A, 3D, 4G. And that'll give me a major 7 chord, which I think is kind of pretty. And then I can kind of maybe go one step further, like... change the root note into like a different kind of run. Everything kind of sounds diminished in this tuning right now, which again, it's just an example of kind of messing around. So, Don't like this one. Let's take that G, tune that back down into a regular G, and take that B and go, let's make that an A. So now I have a G, an A, and an E right there, okay? Now, if you think of that, we can talk about maybe like if I see a G, an A, and E, I see an A and E, and I'm like, okay, that's a root note A, and it's fifth. I can add a G in there, right? And that'll give me a dominant 7 all on its own, right? I could do this. Gives me like a chimier sound, right? This is actually pretty awesome. I'm trying this right after you're done up tuning. I never would have tried that, but to save my strings, I'm down tuning standard first, then back up. Yeah, cool. So again, this is really super off the cuff right now. I have no idea, truly, I have no idea what I'm doing or if any of these tunings are even gonna sound good. The point is all just exploring and then maybe eventually finding something that'll sound good, okay? Now we can kind of take we can take notes from like stuff that has come before, right? So, I've got this E, A, and G. Right? Like if we think of other things that might go with this, like let's tune the A string down to a G to match that other G string. Right? So now I have an E, no, a D. Let's make this an E again. And the method to this is I'm trying to match up strings to find commonalities. I've got an E, a G, a D, a G, an A, and an E. So right there, that's kind of like a big open sounding thing I've got going on right now. So now I can start adding notes that I know are going to sound good. Let's see, so E, G, D, G, A, E. Okay? Now, I like the sound of those G's in there. Okay? So I can add more G's because I know the low E string and the high E string are the same. So I can add that, and I know that's going to sound good, right? Just because I can track those notes. And if I'm thinking in the key of G, I know that F sharp is also going to sound good, which is the second fret. Now maybe I can just take the top of it and make that second fret, and I know I'm going to get a G major 7-ish type vibe. Okay, it won't be exactly a G major 7, but I'm thinking of those intervals, and it kind of sounds pretty now. What's the second note in the key of G? A. The third note, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So now I can kind of just go through this chord scale. All I'm doing is, since I recognized that G sounded good, and whatever, I couldn't even tell you what I'm tuned to if I don't look at that tuner again. Which again, someone asked they wanted this in tabs. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. But again, we're at E, G, D, E, G, D, G, A, E. For the life of me, I will never remember that. Which is good that we can play this back and kind of figure out what we're doing. I knew the G sounded good. All those notes that we just talked about, there's no F in there, so this is the key of G safe zone, is what I'm thinking of. I'm just gonna go through the notes in the key of G on the low E and the high E strings, which I know those, because those are still kind of standard, all right? I have written a couple songs in alternate tunings. I'm a fan of Dad Gad, for sure. That's a good one. Double Drop D is also another cool one we can talk about later. But again, so all this is a G and another G with kind of just some sparkle thrown in the middle to the F sharp. 5, which is an A. 7. I know that C fits, so maybe I'll stay on the B but add a C. And a D. I'm just kind of messing around. I have no idea what I'm doing, no idea how to even create that, but I think that's kind of like a Will Ackerman style, or just kind of like a reasonable approximation of kind of how he thinks and how he kind of just uses new tunings to discover things, right? So basically that was just kind of like using the outside E strings to kind of try to make something sound prettier, right? So play a melody in a scale on the same string. Absolutely, right? Sounds great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ben. Sounds cool. So this is just kind of like one thing. Again, I'm not doing anything, I promise you, I'm not doing anything special at all. Playing a melody scale on that string, which is kind of why it helps to learn new modes, right? If we're doing something in the key of G. And again, the reason I picked the key of G is just because we were playing around. I noticed that G string sounded good, and the low A string is tuned to a G. So basically we have two G's on the inside, right? Undercover G's, right here. Sounds like an awesome cop TV show. So if we add notes from the key of G to the outside, then we can kind of like mess around with it, right? So let's take this low A string, right? Let's start, which was the B string. Let's kind of mess around with that, thinking of the notes in the key of G. So again, the key of G is just all the regular notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but the F is an F sharp instead, all right? So A would be open B now. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So I'm thinking open to A, B, C. Those are my melody notes, the first three. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Really easy because I can just track these dots, right? The inlays. All right, until I get to this G, which there's my resolution, and then it kind of starts again. Which just because we've been playing in this key of G for a while, when I hear a G, I notice it as being the root key, the parent key, right? So now let's kind of take some of that same stuff we were doing, but start just adding dot notes on the B string, all right? So we've got G, maybe that third fret, maybe to here, again, the hand shapes might be kind of foreign. Like right now, I'm kind of even thinking, I'm trying to think on the fly, like what's the best way to play some of these? Do I want to do this here, here? Do I want to reach? Like that's kind of like a cool sounding thing, whatever that is. Whatever it is, it looks impressive, right? Take that to an open mic night around a campfire, be like, check it out. No big deal, whatever. And we always know home base can be here, that double kind of third fret thing. Anytime you maybe get a little too out there, we can always come home. And that right there too, that's another thing you can do. Remember we talked about the G being on the 10th fret here, this being the F sharp. I love adding an F sharp into the key of G because that's a major 7. Major 7 voicings are something I'm super in love with in basically any kind of format. Take that and bend it from an F sharp to a G. So like if we're here, if I try hard enough, I might turn this guitar sound like a sitar. Yeah, absolutely, and that affects the tuning and just kind of everything because we're getting a lot of openness from this scale. All right, so here's a trick that we're gonna do because we already talked about, we know the root notes of the key of G on the E strings. Open, 2, 3, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, right? Evil sounding tuning is sharp sounding like a Michael Hedges. Yeah, for sure, it did kind of, right? So let's take root notes on the E string and then just kind of track them with, again, like we said, just the dots, the inlays, and the 10th fret are our B string kind of hot zone notes. So maybe we start teaming up here and then kind of going back and following like one off. just moving them in relation to each other. So I'm always kind of like one back. Or I could do the opposite. Maybe I can start here. Again, it all sounds, you know, kind of good, I guess. Whatever. I like it. I dig it. Maybe I'll keep this, you know? I could even get a notebook out. Again, do any of you remember this tuning off the top of your head? Because I certainly don't. E, G, D, G, A, E. Okay? What you're playing does sound great. Background music to me coming at you, buddy. Yeah, for sure. You know, that's kind of cool. Like something... There's definitely something kind of peaceful about open tunings that whenever I'm badgered into using them, I always am happy that I did. So again, we've got this brand new one to thank Will Ackerman and the good people at Guitar Control for. So definitely thanks for tuning in. And I think really the main point of it is just kind of like, if you ever feel like you don't have motivation to kind of do something, or maybe you're kind of like upset trying to like conquer something difficult, just kind of throw all your theory out the window, just retune the guitar a little bit, make sure maybe some of these strings are the same thing, and then just kind of like start screwing around, because you're going to get different sounds. Like where in the world would I ever like, I would never have thought of something like this before. Just kind of playing in like an open tuning, even if maybe those chords are possible in open tuning, or standard tuning. I honestly don't even know. I'd have to like really kind of like think about what I'm playing. But it's kind of like our buddy Billy Ackerman has always said, you know, retune that guitar. It'll kind of like make you feel the joy of being a beginner again, and kind of just simplifying your songwriting, simplifying your life, and just making good, peaceful, original acoustic music. Why won't you play how to play whole songs on your channel, just the riff deconstruction videos or your cover songs? Okay, so that's in reference to my channel. Guitar channel is awesome because they do like a lot of how to play the whole song, beginning to end thing. I think there are a lot of channels that do that. Again, on my personal channel, I do more of a different approach thing. I don't really teach a lot of like full songs. A lot of people think that I'm just a contrarian, but I think it's just, you know, other channels like Guitar Channel is great. They've got that covered. I just kind of do something a little bit different, you know. But anyways, definitely subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And thanks for joining us. If you came over from my other channel, it's good to see you, for sure. I appreciate all the feedback and all the ideas to help us build both channels. So definitely anything you want to see more of, leave in the comments in this here. And again, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks a lot.